To everybody, good Shabbos, good morning, Shabbat Shalom. Okay, that's all. We're going to start now. And we want to open up with a selection from Yedid Nefesh, which is commonly sung actually at the beginning of Friday evening as a meditative welcome, the longing of the soul for the closeness of God. That is the key theme of this poem as it's sung. Go ahead. It's the very first one. I'm trying to figure out if they have a copy in here, Friday evening service in here. Sometimes they do, in some of the prayer books they have it. Yeah, page 252 if you want to follow it. It's page 252 if you want to follow it.
ידיד נפש, עברה חמה, משוך עבדך אל רצונך.
ירוץ עבדך כמו היער, ישתחווה אל מול הדרך.
ירב לו ידידותיך מנופת צוף ויכולת אדוני סביב העולם נפשי חולת אהבתך עדה אל נא רפנה לה בהרות לה נועם זיווך אז תתחזק ותתרפא והייתה לה שמחת עולם. ותיק אמונה רחמך וחוסנה על בן אהובך כי זה כמה נחשפתי לראות בתפארת עוזך אנא אלי מחמד ליבי וחוסנה ואל תתעלה. היגלנה ופרוס חביבי עליי את סוכת שלומך תאיר ארץ מכבודך נגילה ונשמחה בך מהר אהוב כי בא מועד וכל נילו כימי עולם.
it's a great mood piece for entering into the spirit of Shabbat. And we continue now. Okay. And we continue now on page 2, Matovu. Let's all join in. Go ahead, sing in loud and strong with me. Matovu Olecha Yaakov Mishkenatecha Yisrael. Matovu Olecha Yaakov Mishkenatecha Yisrael. Vani tefilati lecha Adonai ed ratzon Elohim berav chastecha aneni be'emet yishecha. As you may guess, I'm nursing my voice a little bit. Marcelo, that's you to lead the blessings on page 10. You can come up to the microphone. Yeah, come up to the microphone. Page 10, the blessings. We'll all join in. Amen.
Against the rules for this city.
Amen. 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 Thank you. We continue page 54, the opening to the Baruch She'amar, 54, 54. Baruch She'amar v'yahaolam Baruch Hu Baruch Haseh v'reshit Baruch HaMevi Yoseh Baruch Gozem Kayem Baruch Melchem al Haaretz Baruch Melchem al Briot Baruch Shem Sachatov L'Reav V'chaylad v'kayom L'netzach Baruch Podeh Matzir Baruch Shemo Baruch Hatan Mecholam Ha'el Avarachaman Hamhu Lo B'Fiyamo Mishabach V'Far B'Shon Chasidav B'Avadav U'B'Shiradav V'Nechal Chaneinim Shemen Yachid Chaylamim Melech Mishabach B'Arayat Shema Agadol Baruch Hatan Melch Mulal Batishbachot. And we do the opening of the Ashrei on page 80. And then go to the end. Ashrei Yoshvei Beit HaChodelu Chasela Shem Shekachalo Hashem Shalnei Lahavti Lavim. Ilatna Dabepi Birbarch Vasam Shekot Shalabet Vanachne Barakia Miatabaram. Hallelujah. Page 88, the Hallelujah chorus. The Hallelujah chorus. Barbara, can you sing Hallelujah? Do you know the melody? Just come to the microphone. Yeah, take the book with you. Yeah. Okay, to the microphone. Hallelujah. Yeah, watch your step. Just watch your step up. Yeah, to the other microphone. That's it. Yeah, good. Okay, we'll back you up. Together. Shmoni b'shmon. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's okay. Yeah. 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 You're all set. Ha. On the middle. In the middle. It's middle. Yeah. Hallelujah. 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 Bekacho. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Bekia uzo. Hallelujah. 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 Ingvurata. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Karov, good Lord. Hallelujah. 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 Lord, hallelujah, bete, kashofar, hallelujah, hallelujah, benebe, vechinor, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, betov umachol. Hallelujah, hallelujah, beminim ve'ugav. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, B'tzilei Shama. Hallelujah, hallelujah, B'tzilei Truah. Kol Hanshamate Aleya, Kol Hanshamate Aleya. Kohan Shama Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Kohan Shama Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're going to continue the opening of the Shacharit. It's 336. Shachainan marom bekadosh shemo bechaturan tzadikim baranai lai sharim lava tehila befi yesharim teithala uvdivrei tzadikim titbarach uvishon chasidim titramam uvekerev kedoshim tehit kahadash uvemakalot ribevot amcha beit Yisrael sheken chava koitzurim lefon nachalein hebeitenu lo dalal shabach lefoilem memladeh Lekales, our code of Rishut Tishbachot, David bin Shavdecha Meshichacha, Yishtabach, Shimcha, Laad Malkenu. Merachot, Vodot, Meatav Yarolam Boru, Chatanai, El Melech Godol Batishbachot, El Odot, Adonai Niflot, Abocher Bashir, Ezihim Ram Melech, Eche Holamim. We have a nice minion. Let us start page 336. The Chatzi Kaddish and then the Baruch Hu Rise. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba. V'amad yivrach yirutei v'nichma chutei. V'chayechon ov yomechon ov chayedecho beit Yisrael. Ba'agala. Ba'agala ubizman karim amen. Yeh shmei Rabba mevarach le'olam lo me'omaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'shema v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yital shmirikut shaberichu le'la min kol b'chatav shirata Tush bechata benechemata damiram be'alma v'meru. Amen. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai borach leolam va'ed. Baruch Adonai cholam yitzah barech hashich aser shavarei et hakol. Yeah, Dr. Norman. I'm going to invite Dr. Norman. I'm going to open up first with the El Adon, have a musical El Adon, then pick it up from there. Go ahead, page 342, El Adon. 342. Keep on. Wait. We got this musical version. We'll come up with that. And then, yeah. And then I'll do the Torah reading and send my voice for that. Okay, good. Yeah. So it's all yours.
Continue on page 344. יתברך שוננו מלכנו וגואלנו, בורא קדושים, ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, יוסר משרתים ואשר משרתיו, כולם עומדים ברום עולם, ומשיעים ביראה יחד בכל דברי אלוהים חיים ומלך עולם. כולם אהובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים, וכולם עושים בהמה, וביראה רצון קונם. וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה ובטהרה ושירה ובזמרה, ומברכים ומשבחים ומפארים, ומעריצים ומקדישים וממליכים. את שם האל המלך הגדול הגיור והנורא קדוש הוא, וכולם מקבלים עליהם עול מלכות שמיים זה מזה. ונותרים רשות זה לזה. להקדיש לרסם בנחת רוח בשפה ברורה ונעימה, קדושה כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים ביראה, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלך כל הארץ כבודו. באופנים והחיות הקודש ורעש גדול מתנשאים לעומת שרפים לעומתם משבחים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. לאל ברוך נעימות יתרון למלך אל חי וקיים, זמירות שומרו ותשבחות ישמיעו, כי הוא לבדו פועל גבורות, עושה חדשות בעל מלחמות, זורע צדקות משמיח ישועות, בורא רפואות נורא תהילות, אדון הנפלאות, המחדש בטוב בכל יום תמיד מעשה בראשית, כאמור לעושה אורים גדולים כי לעולם חסדו, אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות. page 346, אהבה רבה. Let's sing it. אהבה. 346. אהבה רבה אהבתנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ותרחמת עלינו. אבינו מלכנו, בעבור אבותינו שבטחו בך ותלמדם חוקי חיים, כן תחננו ותלמדנו. אבינו האב הרחמן המרחם רחם עלינו, ותן בלבנו להבין ולהשכיל, לשמוע וללמוד וללמד, לשמור ולעשות ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה, והאר עינינו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחל לבבנו לאהבה וליראת שמך, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך, והביאנו לשלום מהרבן כעבור הארץ, ותוכילנו כמיון לארצנו, כי אל פועל ישועות אתה ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע באמת, להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. We take the four corners of this sit in our hand and recite Shema together, page 346. Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מסבך היום על לבביך, ושינמתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, והיה אם שמוע תשמעו אל מצוותי אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיכם ולעבדו בכל לבבכם ובכל נפשכם, ונתתי מתארצכם בעיתו יורם על כוש, ואספת דגנך ותרשך, וישריך ונתתי אסף, ושקך לי בהמתך ואכלת, ושבעת, הישמרו לכם, פן יפתה לבבכם, וסרתם, ועבדתם אליהם אחרים, והשתוויתם להם. והרע אף אדוני בכם ועשה שמים ולמטר בחד, ומולדו תיתן תהולה, ועבדתם מרמה הארץ, הטובה שאדוני נותן לכם, ושמתם את דברי אלה על לבבכם ועל נפשכם, וקשרתם אותם לאות על ידכם, והיו לטפות בין עיניכם, ולימדתם אותם את בניכם לדבר בם, ושבתך וביתך, ולכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך, ובקומך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען ירבו ימיכם וימי בניכם על האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיכם לתת להם כמהשמיים על הארץ. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף וציצית תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית, וריתם אותו, שכרתם את כל מסורת אדוני ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחריכם ואחריכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת ויציב ונכון, וקיים וישר ונאמן ואהוב וחביב ונאמן ונעים ולא רע ועדין ומקובל טוב ויפה הדבר הזה עלון לעולם בית. אמת אלוהי עולם מלכנו, סור יעקב מגן אישנו, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, הוא קיים ושמו קיים, וחיסו נכון ומלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת. We are going to turn to page 352. מי כמוך? מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. שירה חדשה שבכל גאולים לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמלכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. סור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופתה כאומך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל, ברוך אתה אדוני גואל ישראל. Continued on page 354. Amida, please rise. אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ומביא גואל לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה מתים, אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל ומכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומשמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לך חיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה המתים. page 356. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שהקדשים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך וכרז זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלך כל הארץ כבודו. אז בקול רעש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול, מתנשאים לעומת שרפים, לעומתם ברוך יאמרו, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ממקומך מלכנו הופיע ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך, מתי תמלוך בציון, וקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תשמון. תתקדש ותתקדש בתוך ירושלים עירך, לדור ודור ולנסח נסחים, ועינינו תראינה מלכותך, כדבר האמור בשירי עוזך, על ידי דוד משיח ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנסח נסחים, ולנסח נסחים, קדושתך נקדיש. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנסח נסחים, קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. We'll continue on page 356. Silent. اسمح مش Shalom, page 362.
שים שלום, שים שלום, שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים, עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך. שים שלום, שים שלום, שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים, עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך.
ברכנו אבינו כולנו כאחד באור פניך, כי באור פניך נתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו. שים שלום, שים שלום, שים שלום, שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים, עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך. תורת חיים, תורת חיים, ואהבת חסד, וצדקה וברכה, ורחמים וחיים ושלום.
שים שלום,
שים שלום,
שים שלום,
שים שלום,
שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים, עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל, בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך.
שים שלום,
שים שלום,
שים שלום,
שים שלום,
שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים, עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך. שים שלום, שים שלום, שים שלום, שים שלום, שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים, עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך. ברוך אתה אדוני, המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. שים שלום, שים שלום, שים שלום.
Let's sing Ose Shalom together. Ose Shalom. Ose Shalom bimrumav. Hu yaseh Shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru. Imru Amen. Yaseh Shalom. Yaseh Shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Imru Amen.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love that background. It's Washington Square Park, the Arch. And when I was active director of Jewish student activities at New York University, my office was right behind the Arch. So every time there's a romantic movie, it's always set in that arch right overlooking my office. Good memory. Apologize if you, yeah, here we go. I'm trying to keep my mouth straight. Just words of meditation, page 654. We started into the first sentence of chapter 6 of Pirkei Avot. It's a concluding chapter. It's added to it, and Rabbi Meir, and we got caught up in the question of, well, what do we mean by study of Torah? And I want to continue, because what's the benefit? Why is it that we have these fights in the Israeli government, for example, for funding for yeshiva students to sit and only study Torah? Why? Well, what's the motivation? Well, it's right from this here, you'll see. We start in the middle, because we did the first line, 654. I'm going to go down 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. Let's just continue. It's about 7 lines down. What are the better? Nenim mimeno etzo tushia. One benefits from the person who has devoted his life to Torah, that of counsel and tushia, strengthening, bina ugvura, wisdom, deeper wisdom, and gvura, sense of strength and power. This is what you get. Not only you, but you give it to others around you. Shneimar li etza utushia. Mine is the wisdom and the counsel and skill of mine. Bani bina li gvura, from Proverbs. I am understanding, strength is mine. So when one has developed a deeper understanding of Torah, other than just reading it and memorizing it, but really is engaged in all the commentaries and discussion around it, becomes really a source through the Torah to other people of strength. Then, notenet lo malchut umemshala. The person who's engaged in Torah gains thereby malchut, which we consider a kingdom, but meaning sovereignty, sense of authority. Umemshala, again, the sense of ability to give guidance and direction. Chikur din, the ability to understand the depths of legal arguments, and not just to know the laws when there's a dispute, but to examine what is the real case under it. Megalin lo, now we go next level. Megalin lo razei Torah. Now we go this next level, razei Torah, the secrets of the Torah, mystical understandings beyond what is written, beyond what is said, higher levels, as we have in all the mystic teachings from around the world. The rabbis were looking for this also. What's beyond just this in front of us? Naaseh k'mayan hamidgaber, when becomes as a well that never stops floating, k'nahar she'eino posek, a great river that keeps on flowing. Veitzanua ve'erech hapayim ve'erech ruach, becomes modest and erech ruach, patient. Mochel bano, is able to, they translate it, forgiving of insults. By the way, it's in Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our trespasses, we forgive others, right? Mochel bano is a great attribute. You do not let anybody's insults or slanders move you in any way. And where you are above all of this. Umigalalto, the final goal. Umeromamto al kol hamasim. Enlarges and meromto, raises that person above all that exists. Al kol hamasim. In other words, the ideal goal of Torah is to enable the one who really delves into it to raise to a higher level of existence, an angelic level. In this period, Rabbi Meir in his period, tremendous amount of literature among the rabbis of his period about moving out of body experience through meditation and practice. So one had to be perfect masters of ritual law, purity law, meditative principles and procedures and raised to actually being up to the levels of the heavens and envisioning the heavens literally. So that is the goal. So if the guy in the yeshiva doesn't want to get off his rear end to do any work and fight for the people, it's because he's trying to get up to heaven. We want to understand that perspective. Of course, the other side of it says, Kol Talmud Torah she'ena imo yegiat kapayim. What is it? Any Torah that is not combined with hard sweat, sofa levatel, it will become erased, will not get anywhere, right? But they didn't memorize that part of the quotation. Yeah.
Achievement was this higher set, like you say, but then why do we have the question? Why do we have the ability to question ourselves or to be are forgiven? Because that's innate.
You haven't gotten that far. You have to work on it. Hard work. It is just studying and discipline and study and discipline and study and discipline and sweat. Then we would still be in the Garden of Eden, wouldn't we? Right. Okay, good question. Here's why, by the way, the rabbis actually turned away from it to a great extent and said, let's focus on later. This is around I said the rabbis in general. It's after this period. Turn around and focus. By the time we actually get to the actual mission itself, around 200 and the years following as we get to the Talmud, the emphasis is shifting to, well, let's deal with real people and real lives, everyday lives. Let's focus on that. And so there's a much more pragmatic turn that Jewish thinking takes in that period. Yeah.
I have a disconnect. The study of Torah essentially is an offender of law that have evolved over time for discussion to travel and how to manage the relationship of human beings. Mostly by learning significantly amount and studying and learning one of the different aspects of law makes you very knowledgeable, and probably you can judge people according to the rules. How does it make you humble? How does it make you forgiving of offenses?
And it goes back to the conversation. You have to work on it. That requires that's also part of that training. It's not just reading the books. It is this personal incorporation and inculcation. Without that, it's not worth it. Very important. And again, it says, it's like a tree that has no roots, but one whose actions are greater than one's wisdom. As much as the wisdom may be, the actions have to be even greater and deeper than as a tree that can never be turned over. So what's behind it is this be the way to cultivate ourselves internally. And so we have a whole series of literature in terms of personal development in rabbinic sources and midrashic sources, going on into more recent times, the Musar movement, for example, in Lithuania. How do we cultivate the person? How do we cultivate the individual? Doesn't mean that people do it perfectly. They get off track anyway. But we have, we're fighting that. There's a constant fight to try to keep that on track. So the legal laws is only one thing. It's like the tip of the iceberg of what we have of Jewish thinking, if we think of it. Yeah, it is that part that we can control, but it is based on much deeper things, personal, emotional. Yeah.
And yes, there will be a deficient, so yes. But yes.
Right.
But just not necessarily needs to be
Right. Right. And so, yeah, so the question comes up. Do we, like some Jews did, say, I want nothing to do, since reality impedes on my spirituality, let me move away from reality, go into the desert, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the result of those people sitting in segregated, male-female segregated community, no physical contacts, no sexuality, no marriage, nothing. Be above all, live a life of poverty, which later on, the early Christian community, in some sense, adapted. Some of these early Essenes became some, you may say, founders of early Christianity also. Shall we escape completely? That's the position of this scroll. And the rabbis took the position, no, we cannot allow, and so therefore you want to be the rabbi, you must have a family, you must have children, you have to get some involved in some kind of work. In others, you have to now take all this and come back down to reality, right? We're not, this is very good, but if it's disconnected from reality, right? And that's why, as I say, rabbinic literature now wants to come back. And as you see the reading, we're coming back now to, let's come back then. As high as I want to be, I have to deal with the person down here. Hasidism has it, that the idea of the Rebbe and the Hasid, the Tzaddik and the Hasid. The Tzaddik is up here, he has this wonderful vision. We can't do anything with it. He needs the Hasid from down below. The Hasid is down below, a simple person needs someone to lift him up. So there's this sense, right? You can't be up here alone. You have to be down here. When the two work hand in hand, the person who's spiritually elevated, the person who's seeking on the bottom, when they're combined, now you have actual righteousness. That is the ideal goal. Does it exist? Jews worked on it. Everything is a work in progress. Do we have rabbis go off the track yet? They didn't go off the track yet. The priests and preachers who go off the track, yeah. It's a work in progress. Depends which group. Depends which group. Yeah. Listen, every Haredi group is by, you can't make a generality about any of them. You really can't. There's a guy in Guatemala who's wanted by the Israeli law and by the authorities because he considers himself a Hasidic rabbi and so on, but he has his own polygamous cult. Okay, go figure, right? Does that speak for the religious community? No. Right? Each one is his own, very independent. So that's why we don't have any pope to speak for us. Right? Nobody can speak. Nobody has an authority to speak for anybody else. So he doesn't have an authority to speak for me.
But we had to because the Shabbat to be good.
Yeah.
Is to make reality better.
Yeah. Right. So there, right. The Rebbe's wisdom was to say, if we are stuck inside our shtetl, we have no benefit to anyone. So he sent him, Ufaratzta, go out. Yama Bekedma, it's funny, you go out north, south, east, west. And that was the late Rebbe, his brilliant vision. Okay. Kaddish the Rabbanan, page 20. Well, those are second. Joe, would you lead us, please? Page 20.
Yiskadash Meiraba. Yamlich Malchusei. Achayechon Levimechon and Achay Bachol Beis Yisrael. Bagala Bisman Karim Bimru Amen. Yehesh Meiraba Mavurach Olam V'Olma Maya. Yisparach Vishtabach Vispua Visramam Visnaser. Visadar Visale Visalo Shemei the Kodisha Barichu. The Elam and Kol Berachata Vishirata Tishbachata Vanechamata Tameron Beoma Vimru Amen. Al Yisrael al Rabbanon al Talmudan al Kol Talmudai Talmudanon al Kol Man V'Raisa Bi V'Raisa Yi V'Raisa V'Hain Vi V'Chol Asar V'Asar Yahai L'Chon L'Chon Shalom Rabba Chinu V'Chisu V'Rachmam Chaim Arichem Mezoinim Brichem B'Kunu Min Ikamin V'Hiu Di V'Shemar V'Amru Amen Yehei Shalom Rabba Min Shemayim Chaim Tov Malayni V'Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen Ose Shalom Bimramo Hu Barachmov Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael V'Imru Amen.
Please be seated. I'm just going to introduce the Torah reading now before, and then Dr. Norman, you'll take from there, and then we'll work on the Torah reading itself. We're in a very interesting portion, just because of the opening lines, portion of Pinchas. And it is a follow-up to the portion of last week of Balak, which is about Balaam comes to curse us and instead blesses us. And in the end, they discovered the only way to destroy the Jewish people is through the men and the women. In other words, the men have a weakness for women, and that's the only thing that weakens them. And so the enemy brings in their women. The head of the tribe falls in love, and in the process devotes himself to the pagan god Baal Peor, and there are all sorts of, we may say, dirty humor that the rabbis engage in about what that means. I won't go into the play on words in that, but comes Pinchas, the son of Eliezer, and takes his spear, rams it through the head of the Israelite tribe and through the body of the Midianite princess, carries the body through, and the plague that breaks out is ended. And we come into this part, and God gives Pinchas a blessing. In Pinchas ben Elazar, page 686, Eshivet Hamati, he removed my anger, B'kanot kinati, in his exceptional zealotness on my behalf, and therefore I did not destroy the children of Israel. And so I gave him Briti Shalom, my covenant of peace. And many, many questions is right. Is this an insult or is it a curse? Is it an insult or is it a curse? B'kanot kinati is, I want this guy, zealous, fighting for me. I gave him Brit Shalom, covenant of peace. Find out. Why do I have to give you a covenant of peace if I want the zealotry? Right, so there's the question. Rabbis go into it in the retrospect. And they're looking at the wars against the Romans. And the term used in that period for the people leading the war against the Romans, that led to the destruction of Jerusalem, was Kanaim. It's the same word, Kanaim, Kanoat, Kinati, it's the same word. Right? Kanaim. Another word used for them, by the way, Sicarii. I remember there was a movie not long ago here, Sicarii, some Mexican gangs that have daggers. It is from this period. The Kanaim used it. They would wipe out their enemies in the middle of the marketplace, stab them, disappear into the crowds, and thus remove those things, those people they thought were traitors, and led to the destruction of Jerusalem, and later on, second rebellion of the Bar Kokhba, two disasters almost wiped out the Jewish people, almost wiped out the presence of the land of Israel as a result. And so they're looking from their perspective and saying, they are identifying themselves with Pinchas, the zealot. Sounds very good. When you carry it out, though, you lead to all sorts of disaster. They come up with all sorts of changes in the interpretation of what it meant. Turn around and they look at the letter Priti Shalom, my covenant of peace, and they look at the Vav. And if you see the Vav on page 686 on line 12, this is line 12, right towards the end of the line 13, there is a star over the letter Shalom. And why is that there? If you look at it very carefully, you see that there is a misprint. What looks like a misprint, you see the letter Vav has a blur in it in the middle. And the reference to the bottom says Vav Keti'ah. The Vav is cut in half. So it leads itself to a question, well, why did they write it? Why? What's the message in it? So the rabbinic explanation is the message in it is that any peace that is built on violence is a fragile peace. right? And they try to get this message out. And the haftarah that is normally used for the Shabbat also is, we don't do it because we're going to read another one because of the season of preceding Tisha B'Av, but it's about the story of Elijah. And Elijah at Baal, he defeats the priests of Baal. You would think he'd be very happy, and no, instead he runs for his life. And God talks to him and says, "Why are you upset?" And he says, "Kano kineti." The same, almost the same word, Kano kineti. Here it is, Kano kinati. I've been exceedingly zealous. And God says, "Okay, go now." And 4 days later, let's talk again. And he comes again to him. He says, "Oh, what's up? Why are you so upset?" I've been exceedingly zealous. At which point God says, "Okay, you're no longer the prophet. Elisha is going to be the prophet in your place." And the rabbis explain why they put this haftarah with it. We cannot live with this kind of zealotry. We're going to take Elijah, and Elijah is identified with Pinchas, the symbol of zealot, and we're going to move him down a peg. So now what happens to the image of Elijah? What do we remember Elijah for? Elijah brings reconciliation between the children and the fathers, sons and fathers before. So there is not a destruction. And so Elijah becomes in the symbol of bringing reconciliation. Instead of the symbol of violence, becomes a symbol of reconciliation. Again, all this in order to wean the Jewish people away from zealotry. All right, and very telling in our days, we have this problem now in the Israeli government. We do have people who are pushing and taking laws in their own hands in some of the villages, taking vengeance into their own hands. Is that a solution? Will that, is that going to bring us any closer to anything, or is it going to cause our destruction? Right? We're very, very afraid in Israel. We also are in this period of 3 weeks, or the 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av, and the rabbi said, what was the downfall of Jerusalem? And it was hatred on the inside. The outside was no problem. Roman armies just sat it out. They waited till the defenders inside Jerusalem killed each other off and then went in. So we have this as a warning to ourselves to always step back from the brink. Yeah, okay.
But I think these are more than even jails and try to keep order or try to keep the back to the people or the rules that they were before. He becomes also kind of unique because he's a Levite and he goes to war. So he actually also soldier.
Well, Levi is violent. All right, there's a trend of violence in Levi in the family history, right? Some of this. So there's a hint of this. Yeah.
The way that things have behaved is like a lot of the history of Israel future is kind of similar. Kings act like Pinchas. David also become like Pinchas in the sense that he has to deal with the kids.
No, that's straight warfare. That's straight warfare. That's civil warfare. And he's doing it as David is engaged. He's doing it as part of a plan of the nation. The fact that King Saul wants to kill him is a different complication. But he's doing it under instructions from Samuel. This is the nation. We're together. We're organized. All war is violence, right? So the question is, do you do war as a result of discussion and debate and conclusion reflecting the nation, or are you the one man who, like Prigozhin, so you're going to come back and handle and take everything down by yourself in Russia, right, and end up in exile somewhere because you were stupid? That's basically the difference. Big difference. Yeah. No, that's military. Military is not a zealot. You in the military, you don't want the guy going out and doing dangerous things. You want the guy who's following the sergeant's orders, right? And in the military, you don't want the guy who Rambo. You don't want the Rambo. You want the guy who's working with the sergeant and the platoon leader and whatever it is. Discipline.
there. I think when there was a threat, they make a group of people who were, I don't know, they were trained as soldiers.
If they were not trained, they couldn't fight. Training, there was training, but the Romans were very good. They were very well trained. Everybody's well. The Jews were professional soldiers also. And the Roman legions had Jewish armies against Jerusalem. They're professionals. They're professionals. All peoples were there. You had professional armies. They were not hop-up. You couldn't. They were always would have walked you over. But that's one of the things the rabbis discussed this question. Moses and the elders are confounded. They don't know what to do. Pinchas goes in single-handedly because there's no leadership. So when you have a vacuum of leadership, and the zealots take over. As I say, in the biblical account, it's to his praise. The rabbis turn it around. And they really criticize him heavily. How could you? And it's because Moses fumbled at this point. And that's why Moses, right after this, has to appoint Joshua. It's very clear in this in the same portion. He's got no longer the ability to make critical decisions. Yeah. That's why he has to die. Moses, and I'm sorry to say, he has to die at the end. Can't have him in the way. Right? One of the hardest things in world history is where you have these great leaders who led the nations and then refuse to disappear. And then all that they have built up collapses. So Moses put aside. Very hard, very harsh. All right, let's go ahead now. Torah reading. Take out the Dr. Norman, please. I'll let you take it from here. Three 394.
אין כמוך, גואלים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך, מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. אב הרחמים, היטיב ברצונך את ציון, תבנה חומות ירושלים, כי בך לבד בטחנו, מלך אלרם ונישא, אדון עולמי. ויהי בנשוא אהרון, ויאמר משה, קומה אדוני, ויפוסו אויביך, וינוסו משנאיך מפניך, כי מציון תצא תורה. כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים. ברוך שנתן תורה תורה, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. روش میدیم علم برکت رخ و اطرخ یه رو تاقی من مخ اسرائیل لعلم وانا رخیص فلیشمه کدیشا یکیرا انا امرتوش بخان یه روا کدماخ لتتفخ لیبی بوریتا و تشریم میشعلیم به لیبای لخول اماخ اسرائیل لطاول خیم بالاسلام آمین. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai iti, Ramo Shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai הגדולה והגבורה והתפארת והנצח והחול כי כל בשמיים ובארץ לך אדוני הממלכה והמתנשא לכל ראש רוממו 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 אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להדום רגליו קדוש הוא רוממו 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 אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להקדשו כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו. אתם חיים כולכם היום.
Is there a Kohen in the house? Okay. Ja, so wir gehen kolmas no amen hakola nu kvod la tor yamod you don't have to David Shraga Levi bin kohen. First Aliyah chapter 25 verses 10 through 12.
Baruch hu es Adonai hamavarach. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Voed. Baruch Adonai Melech Haolam asher b'chabonu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu es torusoi. Baruch Atu Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. וידבר משה לאמור פנחס בן אלעזר בן אהרון הכהן השיב את חמתי מעל בני ישראל וקנאו את קנאתי בתוכם לא כיליתי את בני ישראל בקנאתי לכן אמר הנני נותן לך את בריתי שלום בריתי שלום.
ברוך אדוני מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת חי עולם תבשרנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
יעמוד ינונך בדוד שרגא לוי.
ברוך הוא אס אדוני המבורך. ברוך הנברך לעולם ועד. ברוך אדוני מלך העולם אשר בחבנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
והייתה לו לזרוע אחריו ברית כהונת עולם כהונת עולם תחת אשר כנה לאלוהיו, ויכפר על בני ישראל בשם איש ישראל המוכה, אשר הכה את מדיינית זמרי בן סלו, נשיא בית אב לשמעוני, בשם האישה המוכה המדיינית, כזבי בת צור, ראש אומות בית אב במדיין הוא.
ברוך אתה מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורה סמל, היום נתן בשכרנו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה. יעמוד מאיר בן משה.
Page 686, verses 16 over to the next chapter, verse 4.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך, ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. וידבר אדוני משה למוצרו את המדיינים.
הקיתם.
מדיינים והכיתם אותם כי יצורים הם לכם ונכליהם אשר נפלו לכם על דבר פאו, על דבר כזבי בת נשיא מדיין אחותם המוכה היום ביום המגפה, על דבר פאו מה יהי אחרי המגפה. ויאמר אדוני משה ואל אלעזר בן אהרון הכהן לאמור, שאו את ראש בכל עדת בני ישראל מבין 20 שנה ומעלה לבית אבותם, כל יוצאי צבא בישראל. וידבר משה ובני ישראל היוצאים מארץ מצרים.
אלוהינו מלך העולם, נתן לנו תורת אמת ותאיר לנו על דרכנו. אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Page 687, verses 5 through 11.
Yeah.
Number 4.
לעמוד.
תעמוד.
בעמוד.
תעמוד.
ברכה.
ברכה בת חיים ומנוחה. ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
ראובן בכור יוסף בני ראובן, חנוך משפחת חנוכי, לפל ומשפחת הפלוי, לחצר משפחת חצרוני, לכרמי משפחת הרקמי, אלה משפחות ראובני, ויפקודיהם 43,730 בני פלו, אליאב בן אליאב נמואל, ודתן ואבירם, ודתן ואבירם קרואי העדה, אשר הצב על משה ועל אהרון בעדת קורח, בתחצתם על אדוני, ותפתח הארץ את פיה ותבלע אותם ואת קורח במות העדה, באכול האש את 50 ו200 איש, ויהיו לנס, ובני קורח לא מתו.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
Page 687, verses 12 over to 22.
יעמוד אברהם בן הרש.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך,
ברוך המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל הימים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן.
בני שמעון משפחתם למועל משפחת למועלי לימין משפחת הימיני ליחין משפחת היחיני לזרח משפחת זרחי לשאול משפחת השאולי אלה משפחות השמעוני 22,000 ומאתיים בני גד למשפחתם לצפון למשפחת הצפוני לחגי משפחת החגי לשוני משפחת השוני לאזני משפחת האזני ארי משפחת הארי לערוד משפחת הערודי לאריאל משפחת האריאלי אלה משפחות בני גד לפקודיהם 40,500 בני יהודה ועונן וימת ועונן בארץ כנען והיו בני יהודה למשפחותם לשאלה משפחת השאלני לפרץ משפחת הפרצי לזרח משפחת זרחי והיו בני פרץ לחצרון משפחת חצרוני לחמול משפחת החמולי אלה משפחות יהודה לפקודיהם 76,500
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet behaye olam nata betochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
23,
23 through 30.
34.
Start with the Sahar and we end with before the
יעמוד
Wolf,
וולף
Ben Sam,
בן יוסף. הולכו
Ben Moshe, I'm sorry.
בן משה.
Baruch es Hamvara, Baruch Adonai Hamvara Lo Boed, Baruch Ato Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Bochar Bonu B'Kol Chamim Nosan Lona Tarosa, Baruch Ato Adonai Nosaim HaTorah.
בני שכר למשפחתם, תולה, משפחת תולאי, לפועה, משפחת אפוני, ליישוב, משפחת יישובי, לשמרן, משפחת השמרני, אלה משפחות יששכר לפקודיהם 24,060,300, בני זבולון, אלה משפחותם לסרד, משפחת הסרדי, לאלון, משפחת אלוני, ליחיאל, משפחת ליאלי, אלה משפחות הזבולוני, לפקודיהם 60,500, בני יוסף למשפחותם, מנשה ואפרים, בני מנשה למחיר משפחת המחירי, למכיר הוליד את גלעד משפחת הגלעדי, אלה בני גלעד, אלעזר משפחת אלעזרי, לחלק משפחת חלקי, ועשריאל משפחת עשריאלי, ושכם משפחת שכמי, ושמידה משפחת השמידאי, וחפר משפחת חפרי, וצלופחד בן חפר, לא היו לו בנים כי אם בנות בשם בנות צלופחד, מחלה ונועה וחגלה ומלכה, מלכה תרצה, אלה משפחת מנשה, ולהם 52,700.
שבעת מאוד. 34.
That's it.
Baruch Ato Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Nasan Lonu Toras Emes, Chai Olam Notab Shanu, Baruch Ato Adonai Nosaim HaTorah.
יעמוד
Uri ben Chaim ben
מרים בחיים.
This is the sixth. Huh?
Baruch et Adonai Hamvarach, Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Olam Vaed, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bechar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato, Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
35.
Amen. אלה בני אפרים למשפחתם, לשתולח, משפחת השתולחי, לבכר, משפחת בכרי, לתחן, משפחת תחני, ואלה בני שתולח, לאירן, משפחת האירני, אלה משפחות בני אפרים לפקודיהם, 32,500, אלה בני יוסף למשפחתם, בני בנימין למשפחתם, ולמשפחת הבלי, לאשבול, משפחת האשבולי, לאחרים, משפחת האחרימי, לשפופם, משפחת שופמי, לחופם, משפחת חופמי, והיו בני בל הערד, ונעמן משפחת הערדי, לנעמן משפחת הנעמי, אלה בני בנימין, משפחתם, פקודיהם 45,000 ו600. אלה בני דן למשפחותם, לשולחן משפחת השולחני, אלה משפחות דן למשפחותיהם, כל המשפחה השולחני לפקודיהם 460,400, בני אשר למשפחותם, למנה משפחת ימני, לישבי משפחת ישבי, לבריאה משפחת ברי, לבני בריאה, לחבר משפחת חברי, למלכיאל משפחת מלכיאלי, ושם בת אשר סרח, אלה משפחות בני אשר לפקודיהם ב50,400, בני נפתלי למשפחותם, היחציה משפחת יחציאלי, לגוני משפחה גוני, ליצא משפחת יצרי, לשלם משפחת השלם, אלה משפחות נפתלי למשפחותם בפקודיהם 45,400, אלה פקודי בני ישראל 600,730.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Just the rest of these have been lists of names and names and names, and it sounds like we went through this in the beginning of Numbers, except now 38 years has gone by. And so why recount? Well, after 38 years, you're going to go into the land you want that we have, but also what comes up next is how is the land to be divided? And therefore, in order to divide the land, we want to establish who are the official families that are recognized families. Hence, the names of women in two cases. One, the daughters of Tzlofchad, and the 5 daughters, because now we have to resolve what happens. And there's actually one other, and then nobody mentions Serach bat Asher. And so the question is it literally Serach, the daughter of Asher, or Serach bat, who would be indicating descendant of the daughter as opposed to the sons in this case, right? And now we're going to go into the question, daughters inherit under what conditions, and so that's going to be at the actual end of this very same portion. Yeah.
When did they plan the division of the land of Israel to assign to the different tribes?
In theory here,
So
in actual fact,
you don't know, but
yeah.
essentially this is essentially the
Right, this is
the
preparation.
beginning of
Right. We want to identify who has the rights to what territories, right? But it's also, yeah, we want to identify who has the rights to what land, because it's very important. We want those the land to stay within the tribe. Therefore, the laws of loans against the land, laws of sales of land and so on, all to stay within the territories, because we don't want the tribe. We don't want to have like having in the Oklahoma territory where everybody set on a wild mad dash. And whatever they staked out, and then they got killed as they were killing each other to move the stakes back. And we don't want that. Right? At least in theory. If it's carried out.
Parcellation.
Parcellation, yeah.
Parcellation because it didn't belong to anyone before.
Well, it belongs to some other people, but not when it's with Israel, right? But we want to make sure then that it to prevent encroachment of front territories. We're very, very concerned. Very concerned about that. So it's
was to the entire Israel.
the official.
And actually, when they started.
Yeah, it took time to get in, yeah, and they moved the tribes around also, the result of the wars, yeah. But the concept is there, that's what it's trying to establish. All right, now, let's pray for those who are ill in Shabbat. Avtenu b'ham Yitzhak Yaakov. So if God have that, you pray for the Pet Cholim. And the Holy One, bless thee, bless our ancestors, bless the bless and heal. Alexander, about the rose, people about sorrow, carbon drop, a lot of drop. I didn't do that. Everybody. More question than mine. I think that was set yet barley woman that the law to show the side. The alcohol rose up with that. Kind of started about the head. Richard Zeller, Jeffrey Clark, Howard Whalen, Judy Smith, Marvin Katz, on the side of the Hall, Samuel Smith, Andrea Basila, Lama Masha Ben Sarah, Mr. Gibson, Leodore, Bruce Jason, Arthur Bennett, Daniel Amidan, Mazel Rea, Eastside Nicorola, Yappa Street, Ireland Free, and other grouping that Mohammed, those who have been by COVID virus, other virus, infections going around, chemical pollutions, wars, world, those who might not buy. Also names of those who are ill. No,
Shima Harlev, Aaron and Ter Harlev, Susan Feinberg, Sharon Lipman, Esther Rachel Batsiva, Laban Moshe Batsara, Helen Flax and Adam Flax.
Alex Holt, Edward Malamed, Larissa Malamed.
From Rodman. Judy Freeman, Carol, and Julian Eisen.
It's also Asa Smoller. Asa Smoller.
And all those for Hill, we pray for all of them, for the wonderful, and they are, you know, they are, so not that we get it. To the homeless and the healing of the body and the mind, that we all has to do so.
Amen. Me. Misha
Pastor
Bela.
Jordan singing on the, up on the screen.
Yeah.
We'll follow along with this.
Mhm.
מי שברך אבותינו, אברהם, יצחק ויעקב. מי שברך אמותינו, שרה, רבקה, לאה ורחל. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, 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 and bless us as well, and bless us as well. Bless us with the power of your healing. Bless us with the power of your. May your hearts be filled with understanding and strengthened by the power of your love. Mi sheberach avoteinu, Avraham, Yitzchak veYaakov. Mi sheberach imoteinu, Sarah, Rivka, Leah ורחל. May the one who blessed our mothers, may the one who blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, 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 and bless us as well. Hear our prayer, 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 and bless us as well.
Yiskadav veyiskadash shmei Rabba ve'almu divrei charise ve'yamlich malchutei b'chayechan u'b'yamechan u'b'chaye b'chol beis Yisrael b'hagala ובזמן קרים ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבא מבורך בעולם ועולמי ועולמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויספואר וישרומם וישנשא ויסהדר ויסלח ויסלו שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירם בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יעמוד יצחק באיזה מפתח.
We're going to go on page 698. Pinchas also, the last paragraphs of Pinchas deal with the different offerings given on the holidays. We read these on special. No, we're going to go, you can jump ahead. Jump ahead here. The actual end of Pinchas.
End of Pinchas.
698. B'yom hashmini the 8th day at Sarah.
יום השמיני עצרת.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אתה המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Page 698, verse 30.
Verse 35.
ביום השמיני עשרת תהיה לכם כל מלאכת עבודה לא תעשו והקרבתם עולה אישה ריח ניחוח לאדוני פר אחד העיל אחד כבשים בנשנה 7 תמימים מנחתם ונזקיהם לפר לעיל ולכבשים במספרם ממשפט ושעיר חטאת אחד מלבד עולת התמיד ומנחתך ונזקח אלה תעשו לאדוני במועדיכם לבד מנדרתכם ונדבותיכם לעולותיכם ולבנותיכם ולנזקתכם ולשלומכם. ויאמר משה אל בני ישראל ככל אשר ציווה אדוני את משה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו את תורתו, תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה. Strong hand. Yeah. Careful. You don't want too fast.
Jenny.
Ready?
Move it down.
Please rise.
Oh.
There,
now.
Yad Moshe.
Eitz Chaim Hila Machazikim Ba Simchei HaMeyusha Eitz Chaim Hila Machazikim Ba Simchei HaMeyusha Berachenu Becholchenu Am Vechol Tikvoteinu Shalom ורחמו בכל חיינו עם וכל תקוותינו שלום. לי 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 La 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 la. Haftorah is found on page 710.
Skipping over to chapter 1, we're in the period between the difficulties. Shabbat Thomas was the Thursday, and then 2 weeks after will be the Shabbat and Shabbat. Shabbat Thomas represents the breach of the walls of the temple compound, and then Shabbat the actual destruction of the temple, both then under the Babylonians and later under the Romans. Practically on the same day, so we kept that date as one date. And Elijah just said, what happens when we fight against each other? The kingdom of Judea had more or less an accommodation with the Babylonians, and then there's an internal rebellion, and in that internal rebellion, that's when the Babylonians came in and destroyed the city. With the Romans, sort of had a working accommodation, uprose, and we turned against ourselves, and then the Romans were able to walk in. So we have this, as the rabbis warn us, always this danger, let us never turn against each other, because that's the one thing that can do us in. So Yirmiyahu, prophet of the destruction, and it talks about the pain of having to be a prophet, whether he wanted to be or not. He was born to that job. And of course, what's important is it does have a last line to remind us that not all is doomed. And so the very last verses are taken from chapter 2. Go and cry to the children of Israel. I remember how you loved me when we were young. You walked after me in the desert without any questions. And so I remember that. And that's the one thing that will keep us from ever getting apart ultimately. So that's sort of the words of consolation there as the doom is about to fall. Page 710, Dr. Norman, please go ahead.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר נביאים טובים ברצה בדבריהם הנאמרים באמת. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו ובישראל עמו ובנביאי האמת והצדק. דברי ירמיהו בחלקהו מן הכהנים אשר בענתות בארץ בנימין אשר היה דבר אדוני אליו בימי יאשיהו בן עמון מלך יהודה ב13 שנה למלכו ויהי בימי יהויקים בן יאשיהו מלך יהודה עד תום 12 שנה לצדקיהו בן יאשיהו מלך יהודה על גלות ירושלים בחודש החמישי. ויהי דבר אדוני אלי לאמור בטרם אספך ובטרם ידעתיך ובטרם תצא מרחם השתקתיך נביא לגויים נתתיך ואומר אדוני אלוהים הנה לא ידעתי דבר כי נער אנוכי. ויאמר אדוני אלי אל תאמר נער אנוכי כי על כל אשר אשלחך תלך ואת כל אשר אסבך תדבר. אל תירא מפניכם כי איתך אני להשילך נאום אדוני. וישלח אדוני את ידו ויגל פי ויאמר אדוני אלי הנה נתתי דברי בפיך. ראה הבטחתיך היום הזה על הגויים ועל הממלכות לנטוש ולנטוס ולהעביד ולחרום לבנות ולתנות. ויהי דבר אדוני אלי לאמור מה אתה רואה ירמיהו? ואומר מקל שקר אני רואה. ויאמר אדוני אלי היטבת לראות כי שוקר אני על דברי לעשותו. ויהי דבר אדוני אלי שנית לאמור, מה אתה רואה? ואומר סיר נפוח אני רואה ופניו מפני צפונה. ויאמר אדוני אלי מצפון, תפתח הרעה על כל יושבי הארץ, כי הנני קורא לכל משפחות ממלכות צפונה נאום אדוני. ובאו ונתנו איש כסאו פתח שערי ירושלים ועל כל תומותיה סביב ועל כל ערי יהודה, ודיברתי משפטי אותם על כל רעתם אשר עזבוני ויקטרו לאלוהים אחרים וישתחו למעשה ידיהם. ואתה תזול מותניך וקמת ודיברת עליהם את כל אשר אנוכי אספק, אל תחת מפניכם פן אהיתך לפניהם. ואני הנה נתתיך היום לעיר מבצר ולעמוד ברזל ולחומות נחושת על כל הארץ, למלכי יהודה, לשריה, לכהניך ולעם הארץ, ולחנכו אליך ולא יוכלו לך, כי איתך אני נאום אדוני להצילך. ויהי דבר אדוני אלי לאמור, הלוך וקראת באוזני ירושלים לאמור, כה אמר אדוני זכרתי לך חסד נעורייך, אחוות בלולותייך, לכתך אחרי במדבר בארץ לא זרועה. כה יודש ישראל אדוני ראשית תבואתה, כל אוכליו ישמו רעה תבוא עליהם, נאום אדוני. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל העולמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, האל הנאמן האומר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק. נאמן אתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו, ונאמנים דבריך ודבר אחד מדבריך, הכל לא ישוב ריקם, כי אל מלך נאמן רחמן אתה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הנאמן בכל דבריו. רחם על ציון כי היא בית חיינו, ולעלוות נפש תושיע במהרה בימינו. ברוך אתה אדוני משמח ציון בבניה. שמחנו אדוני אלוהינו אליהו נביא עבדך ומלכות בית דוד משיחך, במהרה יבוא ויגל ליבנו. על כיסאו לא ישב זר ולא ינחלו עוד אחרים את כבודו, כי בשם קודשך נשבעת לו שלא יכווני לו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מגן דוד על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך לפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Amen.
Thank you for helping out.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we come to page 115, prayer for the country. Okay. and
Judy,
Anybody come to the microphone, please. Everybody can hear you.
Judy, come over here.
Page 115.
Judy.
Yeah.
Oh, but the second mic.
Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leader and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights of your Torah that they may administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony, to banish all hatred and bigotry, and to safeguard the ideals and free institutions which are the pride and glory of our country. May this land under your providence be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom and helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say,
Amen. Prayer for Israel.
Prayer for Israel. I have it on the screen for you here. And Barbara, can you sing it for us? Prayer for Israel? Yeah. Barbara, you lead it. The prayer, you up to it? Oh, you want?
I don't shake it.
Okay. Okay. We'll do it together. With it. Okay.
Shabbat Shaman. Zu Israel begoalo, Medinat Yisrael. Reishit Simchat Gulatenu. Again Alecha. Uvrat Chasadecha. Uvras Alecha. Ugat Shlomecha. Veno. Amen. Strengthen the hands of those who defend the Holy Land. Avinu Shabbat to the
with triumph. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim. So
Sa'ed Begol.
bless
The land, freed of God,
have us
that was
blessing joy,
joy.
and let us
Let's
say,
say,
and
let us say,
Amen.
Avinu Shabbat Shamayim.
So
To Yisrael Begoalo, the Medinat Yisrael. Reishit Simchat Kulatenu. Again Alecha. Uvras Chasadecha. Uvras Alecha. Ugat Shlomecha. Venomar Amen. Venomar Amen.
Okay, and let's all join in. Like Norman, you go ahead and take care of leading the Torah service, page 122. Yeah, hallelujah. Go ahead, somebody carry the Torah, please.
Each page.
422. Yeah, hallelujah.
Yeah, okay. Open the yeah, hallelujah, Shem Adonai, in his cup, Shemo Levado, Hodu Laheretz L'Shamayim, Yarem Kerev V'Yamo, hallelujah.
Page 424.
Mole
David,
David,
Adonai Benelim,
Avol
Adonai Kavod Va'oz,
Avol
Adonai Benelim, Avol Adonai Kavod Shemo, Yishachar Adonai Behadrat Kodesh. Kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod hin Adonai Adonai al ma'im rabim Kol Adonai b'kova Kol Adonai be'adar Kol Adonai shover harazim וישבר אדוני את אלפי הלבנון,
ויקידם
כמו עגל לבנון, וציון כמו בן רמים. כל אדוני אוסף לעבוד אש, כל אדוני יפיל מדבר, יפיל אדוני מדבר קודש. כל אדוני יכול חיילות, ויחדות יערות, ובהיכלו כולו מרכבו. אדוני למבול ישב, וישב אדוני מלך לעולם. אדוני עוזמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. יאמר שוב אדוני רבבות אלפי ישראל, קום אדוני למנוחתך, אתה ואהרון עוזך, כהניך ילבשו צדק, וחסידך ירננו. בעבור דוד עבדך, אל תשב פני משיחך, כי לקח טוב נתתי לכם, קולתי אל תעזובו, השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, קדש ימינו קדש ימינו
Close.
We're going to continue. Maybe see for a second, page 508 in Kelohenu. We have the same Kelohenu for us. Second, find it. Oh, you got it. Okay. All right. This our karma back to say that back here. Okay, in Kelohenu. Got page 508, we'll sing along. Yeah, you know.
אין כדננו, אין כמלכנו, אין כמושיענו, non como nuestro Dios, non como nuestro Señor, non como nuestro Rey, non como nuestro Salvador. Mi Eloheinu, mi Adonenu, mi Malkeinu, mi Moshienu, ¿quién como nuestro Dios? ¿Quién como nuestro Señor? ¿Quién como nuestro Rey? ¿Quién como nuestro Salvador? No del Eloheinu, no del Adonenu, no del Malkeinu, no del Moshienu. Lo oremos a nuestro Dios, lo oremos a nuestro Señor, lo oremos a nuestro Rey, lo oremos a nuestro Salvador. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Bendito nuestro Dios, bendito nuestro Señor, bendito nuestro Rey, bendito nuestro Salvador. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. Tú eres nuestro Dios, tú eres nuestro Señor, tú eres nuestro Rey, tú eres nuestro Salvador.
Yeah, Ladino. This is not completely Spanish. Is the evidence of
Shalom, everyone. Amidst the current health crisis,
was the Spanish spoke by the exiles that they brought with them to Latino. By the way, it's interesting, that's famous painting of the synagogue in Amsterdam, the dogs inside the synagogue. And I was asking myself in the picture, how did they this is 300 years ago, how did they let the dog inside the synagogue? You see these two guys, they're not they're not seeing eye dogs, they're hunting dogs. Yeah. Okay.
Rosa.
510, all right, so open the ark, please.
Okay, Jenny.
Please rise. Aleinu
לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולת
בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות,
שם
ולא
ושמנו
שמנו
כמשפחות האדמה,
שלא שם חלקנו כהן,
ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומועדים
לפני מלך
מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שבונה את השמיים ויוסד הארץ ומושב יקורם בשמיים ממעל ושכינס זאת ושכינס זאת וגורם אלוהינו אין עוד אמס מלכנו איפה זולתו ככתוב בתורתו וידעת היום והשיבותו אל לבבך
האלוהים
שמיים ממעל ועל ארץ ועל ארץ מתחת אין עוד אנחנו מקבלים.
כל בית ישבה כולו של מעליהם וכל בית ישבה יקבלו עולם את מלכותך ותמלוך עליהם מרון ובית שהמלכות שלך היא כל עולמה תמלוך בכבוד ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד
ונהמה והיו אדוני מלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Page 512. Recall those loved ones, members of this congregation, friends and relatives of members of this congregation who passed away this year. And then his son Ed Rush, Hanan Alamed, Herb Lieberman, Glenn Goldsmith, Stephen Alexander, Mami Ben Show, Dovtav and Upland, Spain, Heaven, Leonard Waller, and recall the oddsets of those passed away for this season. This is Genya Schneider, Schinder, Tia Weiss, and Harry Drotta. The memories all be for blessing. Those reciting one Scotch, please recite page 512.
יתקדש שמי רבה וילמד דברי חרטי וימליך באחוזי וחייכון ומייכון וחי בכל בית ישראל בעגליו זמן קרים ואמרו מי יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ועומר ומאיה יסבורך וישתבח ויספורר ויסרמם ויסנסה ויסעדר ויסעלה ויסעלו שמי לקודשה בריחו ואילם את כל ברכתה ושירתה פוס ברכתה ונחמתה דמיום ויום ואמרו מי יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיים חיים עלינו והכל ישראל ואמרו מי עושה שלום במרומו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. Amen.
The service portion with Adon Olam. In together of this one. Go ahead, let's pick a melody. Barbara.
Adon Olam.
למה אשר מולה בטרם כל יציר דברה נס בחפצו כל אז המלך כמו נקרא ויום גדול ויום נורא היי והוא הלוואי והוא יהיה בספרה יום אחד ואין שני להמשיך לו להביאו וליראה ולסח לאור והמשך ואלי בחי גולי והוא צברי ואיס תורה והוא ניסי אמנו נוסי ויאמר ויום אקרא וידו אפקיד רוחי ואיס אישה יאירה גביאסי אדוני לי ולא Shabbat Shalom.
As you can tell, my voice is not as great as it was, and I thank you, Dr. Norman, for helping us out. So, and we're running a little bit late, so I'm just going to go into my topic. I won't cover everything. I think I'm going to speak as long as my voice holds up. When it disappears, I'm going to break at that point. Following up on American Jewish history, and as I go in, there's more and more and more to cover and discover. So I thought, let me get this, pardon the screen share here. I thought as a little start off for this, the Jewish Americana I have here. This one. Just one this up. Oh, yes, no. Do I have it? I can't play the whole thing. Yeah, I don't want to go too far because I'm going to get shot down by the copyright people playing too much of Bob Dylan. He's 1962. He's trying to show he's learning Hava Nagilas. He's still that's the Bob Dylan singing for you. Okay. So that's it's for us Americana. That's what I'm trying to get, a little bit more Americana. Okay, Havana Aguila. Okay, he was a terrible singer. He was a great musician, terrible singer always. Pardon my apologies to Bob Dylan. Yeah. He was a great musician, but yeah, always left something to be out. All right, so here's about life in early America. Thank you. Thank you. So, I don't think you see this in downtown LA or downtown New York anywhere. Right? Kids are playing. Miss Daisy, okay. Driving Miss Daisy crazy. Okay. So anyway, come here. Look at this. I don't, like I said, you don't see this today, even in the worst place in downtown. Kids are playing on the street and there's a dead horse. He's left there to rot because there's no garbage system to pick up the rot. That's 1905, I think. And here's a description of life, home life in that period. Now, okay. Home life in that period for new immigrants. A typical flat, two-room apartment on Allen Street in New York. You have two parents, 6 children, 6 boarders. So in one case, the father was a cantor, so the flat was also synagogue on Saturday mornings. During the week, it was a workshop for 2 dressmaker daughters and a shoe repair shop for the cobbler, who's one of the boarders. As the boarder describes it, the cantor rehearses, the tram passes by, the shoemaker bangs, 10 brats run like goats, the wife putters in the kosher restaurant, and at night we try to sleep in the 2 rooms. That's typical home life. There are even such jaundiced stories as this one in the Yiddish press as follows. Lithuanian Jew looks for a girl, marries a girl for her money. At 1 o'clock, they're married. In the evening, 2 renters, little rooms are rented. On the following day, furniture is purchased. In the evening, the couple already have 3 boarders and 3 boardicas, male and female boarders. On the 3rd day, the husband goes back to work and the wife runs off with one of the boarders. That's life. All right. Tough life. Okay, look at this. Let's have the streets are like with gold. Where's the gold? Here's a typical tenement building. You can see the laundry on the porch. All right. Tough life. Here, a workshop, but cigar maker. This one's Bohemian, right? Because we have many immigrants coming into the United States, all over Europe, primarily Europe, but East Europe and Central Europe. Bohemian cigar maker in the tenement. He had to work there and sleep there as well. 1890. Here. Poverty gap, the Gold Area, West 28th Street. Here, an English poll worker. Right? So even the English had their poor. They came here for better circumstances. This is 1898, I think. Yeah, from this period. Right. Yeah, now here, another one, 1880s. This is already a better established family. Why? I'm looking because they have some dishes on the shelf. It's sort of clean. Poor family, 1-room tenement apartment, New York, 1880s. Right? Kids' beds, the parents' bed, some kind of machinery, maybe clothing, tailor's machinery. So, and look, the story about the woman running off with the boarders may be funny, but it's a reality. It's a tragic reality. The American experience was very demoralizing on the Jewish community in those years. Very demoralizing. Because we had crime, wife desertion, juvenile delinquency, gangsters, and even what we call loose women, Allen Street, Houston, or Delancey. Houston, not Houston Street, but Houston, Delancey. At that time, anything was better than right. That's a good question. The immediate, maybe no, but they knew that it would be. Whereas in Russia, it would not be. That's the difference. So women were applying this trade even at the steps of the synagogue. The forwards, the Yiddish newspaper would describe the windows of some shops. You could see human flesh instead of shoes. Right? Human flesh instead of shoes. There were so-called dancing academies advertised in the Yiddish papers. Those were the call girls. Muckraking journalists of the period were excited to find evidence of a white slave trade run by Jews. Right? There was a famous book by Polly Adler, The Madam. House is not a home. Right? And she ran a brothel. And she wrote her autobiography in 1953, was a bestseller. Major site of New York City underworld activities from the 20s to the 40s, right? Even as we're coming into better times, the middle of the 20th century. Lexington House of Prostitution was a social club for New York's gangsters. A variety of other celebrities, including Robert Benchley's friend Dorothy Parker, right? She was the advice columnist or gossip columnist. It made Adler's name synonymous with sin. Okay. Now, see, when we talk about East Europe, to a great extent, a lot of these were going on. This kind of destruction of the old Jewish world was going on in East Europe. We have, for example, the play by Shalom Ash, God of Revenge, quotes from the Puma, where the pious man has a synagogue on the first floor, and the second floor is a brothel. It was remade as a play not recently, many years ago, a little bit made contemporary. Oh, in East Europe, a famous series of stories by one of the great writers of Russia, Isaac Babel, Jewish writer, short story series, and the famous character Ben Yakrik, King of Odessa. So it's going on. This is happening. Also in North Africa, in the Middle East, it is happening as conditions going up and down and up and down with the whims of the governments, where Jews sometimes have benefits, sometimes benefits taken away. So you have some of this also taking place. Yeah. Yeah. Immigrants always will be. Why are immigrants brought in? Immigrants are brought in to do the work that the residents don't want to do. That's why Europe is aflame, because they brought in immigrants thinking they would have them do the dirty work for them. Then they have no jobs for them, and they blow up. And all the riots are being run by the drug cartels there in France now. They just discovered they stopped the riots now. Who stopped the riots? The drug cartels, because they were losing business. The riots just stopped suddenly. Now, these are problems of immigrants, yes.
There is also a famous writer, HTBE.
Yeah.
And there is a story about that the Litvakis didn't believe that
Yeah, it's happening. Yeah, they're not another topic. So we have the Jewish mafia, names like Joseph Klein or Charlie Jacoby, right? You don't need drug cartels. Then you have heavily alcohol cartels in those years also. Good Jewish names: Bugsy Siegel, Meryl Lansky, the founders of Murder Incorporated, which was an example of cooperation across ethnic lines, Jews and Italians in that case. We know that I officiated the funeral of the attorney that served Al Capone in one of his cases, and buried right next to Bugsy Siegel over his moment of peace. Not the whole face, Hollywood forever. Oh, good. That is when did that one come out? That was yeah. In the rap, you come across all sorts of characters. So I had to help somebody who was involved in the Israeli mafia when I actually had an issue with the real Russian mafia. Okay, so smart ones knew how to get out of business in time, like the father of a previous member of a previous congregation of mine. The father decided he was going to go head-to-head against Al Capone, then realized it was a dead-end game, literally. Left, went to legitimate ventures, built a successful scrap metal business. That was that business. Yeah, that's the real world. Okay, so just as a little touting our own horns, it was Hollywood Bethel's own past president, Edward G. Robbins, who played that Al Capone character, Little Caesar. Okay, there we go. There you see. Very, very, very. Yeah. I was very Jewish, very Jewish. He would look for a minion wherever he went. Yeah. He also donated to the synagogue and the House on American Activities Committee, and called him on the carpet because he was involved, like all of Hollywood, in trying to identify who was a communist. So he had to show who was he donating to, and it shows Hollywood Temple Bethel among the recipients of the donation. So, of course, the Factor building, now it's Lehman Hall, the next building over. Also to Jake the Barber, mastermind finagler, owner of the Stardust Casino in Vegas. Remember, that was the Paramount Casino at one time. Later cleaned up his reputation with the big donation to JFK. He paid for the Pigs Invasion. He paid for the building of city right now, Lehman Hall. Also, generous developer of churches, gyms, and parks for LA's impoverished Black neighborhoods. There was a period where Blacks and Jews were very closely intertwined in many, many ways, many positive ways. We'll talk about music, for example, and other areas, but also in contractual day-to-day connections. Okay, here's a typical gang. Then there's a Jewish gang, short-tail gang. 4 years hooked under the pier at the foot of Jackson Street, 1887, because they wearing nice hats. Right? They don't dress sloppy. Well, what do we get? Slum living breeds juvenile delinquency, and Jews no exception. 1906, 30% of all children in juvenile court were Jewish. As the Yiddish press phrased it, home life was unbearable, and escaping such home life, Lincoln could enter more sophisticated crimes. Very often, that is, for a young kid, the only way out of extreme poverty. And that continues. Okay, street children sleeping, 1890, the tenement basement, sub-basement. Here, the boys learning how to pickpocket, demonstrating how to pickpocket, right? How they rob people who've passed out. You got the drunk, you just go through his pockets. Okay, we've got characters like Arnold Rothstein, who fixed the 1990 World Series, right? And his main claim to fame was he transformed thuggery into an organized business, like a corporation. Isaac Zucker ran a Jewish arson ring, and you could run an academy for cooks run by Mother Mandelbaum, school for burglary, safe cracking, blackmailing, confiscation. Now, truth is that most Jews were able to steer clear of this life of gangsters and crime, but it did take their toll, this new American experience, took a toll on their Jewishness, the Jewish traditions. My father told me of a legend that deep under Ellis Island lay hundreds and hundreds of tefillin the Jews threw overboard, as they realized that this was a country where they no longer had to be bound literally by the tefillin or bound by any Jewish obligations. That's an exaggeration, but it is a symbolic story. Life in this new country did put an end to the kind of devotion the Jews had brought with them. Keep in mind, these coming here were not the ultra-Orthodox, as we think of today. That's a later wave. They were not the most observant of the Jews. They were traditional. They were traditional Jews. Some were Orthodox, others more traditionalist in behavior. Hasidic is later, much later. Hasidic is World War II. Yeah. 1880s, 1890s, mostly just the middle Jewish. You may have had some, but it's not the big Hasidic. That's World War II. So before, right before when they could, and afterwards when they were whatever was left. Yeah. Jews who were very, very devout tried to stay put as much as they could. So here, they did try to keep some observances. You have your Jewish immigrants carrying packages of matzahs, 1908. Right? So, and they did not throw away the Jewish wrapping. No, they kept it, but they just weren't quite as devout as the Jewish immigrants. And the New World did its job on that. One of the great classics of the period was the rise of David Levinsky, the founder of the Forward Yiddish newspaper. Now it's an English online site. Abraham Cahan. So he described in great literary detail how a promising yeshiva succumbs to the temptations of American life. And it's worth reading. It's very, very well written novel. He becomes a big businessman, but he loses his soul in the process. So how did the children and grandchildren of these greenhorns climb out of the mud? That's the big question. So you do what Jews in time of poverty did. You do Luftgeschäft. You make business out of air. Whatever comes to mind, whatever comes to hand. So I'll give you an example, in case I know personally. Father led a congregation one time in a small town in the heart of West Virginia. And there was a bar mitzvah for a child. When the child came from a town that was even more isolated, an hour's drive away. The grandfather came for the service and was astonished to find a familiar face on the beam. I says, well, I know that man. Much older than you remembered it, but you recognize it. It was the president of the congregation. I remember him. I had him thrown in jail many years ago. What was it? The grandfather in this case had been the mayor, the judge, and police all rolled in one in this small town, very small town. Family had a lumber processing mill. And so it was the entire city. So the president had come to the town as a poor immigrant from Lithuania. He'd been peddling from door to door, but he didn't have a license to peddle from door to door. The sheriff, judge arrested him, put him in jail for the night, right? So from peddling door to door without a license, this greenhorn managed to start a scrap metal yard. By the time I was there, my father was the rabbi and come to stay with there. He had become what Jews would say comfortable. How you doing? I'm comfortable. Here's my yacht, here's my mansion, I'm comfortable. You know? So comfortable, a major Jewish philanthropy sent its top operator An old friend of my father's, he'd been the special advisor for Jewish affairs to the American military government in West Germany. Very top figure. To this isolated town to ask for a major donation to build a school in Israel. Right? From a guy arrested for peddling without license. Okay, so how do you do? Food vendor sells his wares on the streets of Lower East Side. I don't know if he became a millionaire from selling bagels, but pretzels, but yeah, you do what you can. Try to do it legitimately, the best you can. I hear a street peddler, you move a step up, you got a little cart with wheels and you pull it by hand. 1890s. You open a sweatshop, right? In your apartment, 1890, here's a sweatshop on Ludlow Street. Right? You use your skills from the old world as a Schneider, for example, a tailor. But Jews had that practice, so it's a usable skill. And they did have reading skills. Keep that in mind, even if it was Yiddish. But from Yiddish, they could read the Yiddish papers in America. The Yiddish papers in America, like the forwards, were great vehicles to introduce what was American life to them. So they could use that to get ahead also. There was the forwards, there was the Allgemeine Journal, yeah. And so a Greenhorn learned what it meant to be a Yankee, right, from the Yiddish paper. So you would read something like a daily column in the Yiddish forwards, the Brintel Brief, a little tiny bundle of news or letters. And they would, it's like, Dear Abby, questions, and they're told, you do this, you do this.
If that lesson.
Yeah.
If that lesson, grandfather, he used to go and pedal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how you start. So, another thought, Jews are very active in organization for rights, labor rights, right? If you look on the old Yiddish forwards, it had in the Yiddish, Karl Marx's slogan, Arbeiter von allen Ländervereinigen sich, workers of all lands unite. Right? It was a voice of poor workers organizing and gaining the upper hand against oppressive employers in the early years of unionization. So this is a fellow, a Jew like Samuel Gompers, who went from cigar maker, the head of the Cigar Makers Union, to be the founder of the American Federation of Labor, which would later merge with the CIO, become FLCIO. And by the way, the union, idea of unions in America different from those in Europe. It says, the union, yes, socialism, no. They did not adopt socialism per se as a position. And it remained true of American labor movements over the decades, unlike European movements. They decided not to kill the goose that lays the golden egg, but to get a bigger piece of the egg. That was the strategy. And then you have here a picture of kids, garment worker kids. That was a very big thing. Famous fire in a garment factory trying to short waist. Yeah, the doors were locked and kids were jumping out of the windows. Right. Right. Very important. Right. So it has in Yiddish something schlaffer, right? Abolish slavery, child labor. So here's the forwards, the Yiddish paper. I was trying to find a copy. They're pushing Roosevelt, labor's choice, the Arbeiters Auswahl. And what they pointed out in the commentary about is they're moving from democratic socialist to social democratic position. What does it mean? Social democratic. Democracy with social benefits for the people, the working class. And then also, what else helped? So it's organization, right? Skills. It was also the fellow German Jews who had become so successful, who were embarrassed by their green brothers and sisters. They were embarrassed. It was an existential threat to them. Because they had made it up to the top. And here, your friend in the country club says, look at this fucker here, this greenhorn, he's one of you guys, right? And this is very often true for people in other ethnic groups where some make it up and the less successful are left behind. And in many cases, the successful just left the others to wallow in the mud, but it did not happen with the German Jews. Instead of hiding from them, they realized that the only way they could ever feel secure here in America was for the landsmen to move up the ladder as quickly as possible. And so they supported settlement houses, provide tools for advancement for newcomers, and other social services, very much actively involved in it. And also, very interestingly enough, and I remember this when I first came to the Jewish Theological Seminary, which is the conservative movement, I was surprised to find that on the walls at the entrance were the names of German Reform Jewish leaders. People with big daughters of the German Reform movement. And here they were on the walls of the seminary, conservative, strongest supporters. And it was because they recognized that a well-educated, Americanized rabbinate that spoke to traditional Jews, not to Americanized Jews, who left everything behind, but still were traditional, that rabbi could best serve to Americanize them as well and inculcate values and guide them. That was what pushed the conservative movement and made it the premier movement. And it was this wave of East European Jews, still traditional, not Orthodox anymore, but traditional, with well-trained rabbis as their figureheads. Very important. There was also the idea of learning for its own sake. The Yiddish speaker could make sure his child mastered English and the civilization of the new land. So Jews flocked to higher education. It's like City College of New York. So you go to CCNY, City College of New York University, City College, 1920s and 30s. Jews took their place in line of immigrant communities hungering for higher education. Well, not only Jews, a lot of people, right? But it was known for its excellence as the proletarian Harvard and student radicalism, the Little Red Schoolhouse. It had a special meaning for an immigrant Jewish community that was denied access to the elite schools of the Protestant establishment. It was a center of leftist intellectual ferment in the 19s and 20s, and recorded in memoirs of Jewish intellectual life of that period, Irving Howe, Alfred Kazin, other notable alumni, Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter, financier Bernard Baruch, medical researcher Jonas Salk, actor Edward G. Robinson, our own, Mayor Edward Koch, and General Colin Powell. He was a Yiddish speaker. I'm sure. Keep that in mind. So he's put in that. So Jews easily stood out. It was not, they were not liked for this. Keep that in mind. Jews were not liked for this. A writer in 1923 edition of The Nation is a liberal leftist-leaning publication historically, put it bluntly, the upwardly mobile Jew sends his children to a college a generation or two sooner than the other stocks. As a result, there are more dirty Jews and tactless Jews in college than there are dirty and tactless Italians, Armenians, or Slovaks. This is from a liberal leftist publication, The Nation. During the early 1900s, according to one observer, at every university and college I've ever visited, I've heard ungrudging praise of the exceptional ability of the Jewish, especially the Russian Jewish students. So the commentary continues, history is full of examples where one race has displaced another by underliving and overworking. Remember the people in the Charleston March? The Jews will not replace us? This was the fear. That was one of the fears behind the numerous clauses in Europe. Yeah. Right. So it was an idea. It becomes a religion to replace a yeshiva study. Yes. Right. That's right. That's why. Because when you have somebody who's burning to get up and move up, then you're threatened. Right? Yeah, but we're also socially aggressive in the sense that we don't want to be stuck in the bottom. And so we'll take those skills and move up the avenues, whatever's the avenue, yeah.
I was going to mention later, like say the 1980s, 1990s, there was also kind of anti-Asian attitude in higher universities, like in America, because they wanted to live with them as well, kind of like.
We have that's the Supreme Court case. That's part of the Supreme Court case. By the way, Jews are no longer highly represented in the big schools anymore. It's because they're no longer burning to get ahead. That drive is going down. We see that in the college admissions. That's why they were not actually involved in these cases. So, yeah. No, actually, the Jews are not a problem in the current issue. There's less of a push. It actually is less of a push. It's not necessarily because they're discriminating against Jews. There's actually a decline in intensity, and maybe just be that kids of this new generation just don't feel the burn. And I think that's part of it. Yeah. Well, that's a separate issue. Is your Harvard education worth anything? That's a different issue. I'm part of that generation that started that dumbing down of American universities when they started in my generation, started the idea of pass-fail classes. Oh, I don't want you to have pressure. So if you show up in the class and you pass, it's good enough. All right, that's part of it starting then. Mea culpa. Let's say you wouldn't flunk, yeah. Then, man, it started with that, and then it continued with the idea that we wanted students to evaluate professors, and also in that period. And when you put the fox in charge of the chicken coop, right? So professors would be concerned about getting good evaluations because their advancement depended on it. Now, I mean, if you're an entertaining and good professor, okay. But what was happening then was you were bending over and catering to your client instead of, right? It's like a doctor giving the patient the drug that he wants to kill him because you want to keep on getting the patient. That's sort of the same thing. Sort of the same thing. Okay, here, just go on with this, and then we'll wrap up. So, as a Francis Russell from an old Protestant family, he went to Boston Latin School, and that was the best public high school, led the students to Harvard. By 1920, became half Jewish. So he writes, my own background, middle-class Protestant, non-competitive, like that of most Roxbury Latin boys. You're in position, why burn? Why do you have to fight? You do what you have to do, and that's it. Whereas in contrast, Jews worked far into each night, their lessons next morning, letter perfect. They took obvious pride in academic success and talked about it. At the end of each year, room prizes for excellence in each subject, and they were openly after them. None of the Roxbury solidarity of the pupil versus the master. Right? And the old system, yeah, we do what we have to do. We're going to gang up on the master, so he's got to give us, right? If anyone reciting made a mistake that the master overlooked, 20 hands would shoot up into the air to bring it to his attention. All the Jewish kids. Okay, so Jews fought to excel. It was a burning hot drive at that time. They fought to overcome entrenched authorities in the major universities.
That is kind of part of the immigrant process also, where, and if you look at any group of immigrants, when they're able to access,
right,
be educated or whatever, that burning desire to take advantage of all women that are available to excel. So, and as generations go on, because I see even in the primitive, as generations go on, that drops and drops and drops.
The burn goes.
But yet, in the primitive, it's always, there's always someone hitting you over the head that you have, I mean, education. Did I say education? Education. Yeah.
So Caribbeans who come to the United States have done very well.
They've done very well, but then you see in the children, they're getting in with their pals who are out doing whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not saying all of them.
No, it's a problem, yeah.
But it's
You get dragged down because people will drag you down.
But it's also
Also.
the kids want to be
It's right. And who are you next to?
Right.
And the one who's down here wants you down here. I would say they'll drag you down.
And it's easier to be there.
They're gonna try to drag you down also.
Drag you down. I just think it's just
Yeah.
easier to be there.
Yeah, oh, the easy way. Okay.
Work 3 jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, so all these immigrant groups came at the same time with all the same drive. It's just Jews made it very well. So it expressed itself in every avenue of the new Jew in America. And instead of letting the slums and tenants keep them down, they moved out with driving forces. So by the latter half of the 20th century, as the United States became the preeminent leader of the Western world, and by the end of the Soviet system, the sole preeminent leader, right? It became the American century. The Jew in America were uniquely positioned to be at the core of this new America. So you have in entertainment, vaudeville, Tin Pan Alley, to Hollywood, Temple Bethel, radio, television, music, right? Irving Berlin creating Christmas music, Gershwin creating a black musical, Porgy and Bess, with Jewish cantorial themes in it, Rhapsody in Blue. Full involvement in American government, senators, cabinets officials, so-called Jewish seat on the Supreme Court. And in literature, 20th century, Jewish American novels, Saul Bellow, J.D. Salinger, Norman Mailer, Bernard Malamud, Chaim Potok, Philip Roth. Jews were so dominant in America's writings that they were in charge. They were called the Jewish literary mafia because they controlled the publishing industry. Yeah, they controlled it. And here and there, they let a few non-Jewish novelists in. Yeah, I know Salinger, I think maybe was. Yeah. Yeah.
After World War II. The state grows really quickly. It wasn't so hard. It's a different experience for those immigrants because in one generation they were already.
Yeah, I'll talk about that one. That's the next group. That's a different wave. But the Russian wave had to really fight to get to it. Really fight. Because they came into a poor country and left it as a rich country. Right? So Jews became so prevalent at universities, we had this numerus clausus. It was to try to control how many Jews come until the Jews were too powerful and the gates were forced to open. That's basically why you had 20%, 30% at these major institutions, Harvard, Yale, and so on, because they couldn't keep the Jews out of it. So now, the presidents are Jewish, right? The heads, right? So these waves of new Jews kept coming on, refreshing and replacing early waves. So what did we have in the last 3/4 of a century? We had the second wave of German Jewish intellectuals, dominated the sciences. We have the movie Oppenheimer, father of the bomb, and also Einstein, of course. Also, underappreciated, successful movie actress who on the side developed a method of frequency hopping that made American torpedoes invisible against enemy detection. I forgot what her name is. Hedy Lamarr. Brilliant genius. She listened to the Nazis talk to her husband about it, and she remembered it and understood it and went on to develop this. Then in social psychology, social work, social sciences, Viktor Frankl, Kurt Lewin, Ruth Wirth, the names goes on and on. And the intellectual ferment of the 60s, Hannah Arendt, Herbert Marcuse. Herbert Marcuse, the German Jewish intellectual who was supposedly the influence for the SDS and the New Left until he said, I don't like it. That's how far away they took it. And then world affairs, Henry Kissinger, right? Then we also had this wave of ultra-Orthodox Jews coming before and after the Holocaust also. Both yeshiva world, Lithuanian style, and the Hasidic Orthodox, who essentially pushed aside what had been the normative Orthodoxy, or we call modern Orthodox, in the United States, and reinvigorated that wing of the Jewish community. And we had a second wave of Russian Jews, why are we here? From former Soviet Union, far more educated than the Jews that came here a century ago, and produced, among other things, Google, Sergey Brin. And Iranian Jews coming here, better off also than previous waves, brought with us such an entity as Qualcomm, computer chips, and the Zarian family project. And Israeli Jews who brought us Power Rangers and the new media moguls like Chaim Saban, as well as every other building contractor in Los Angeles. So now I'm going to leave, and we're going to close off with this, the $64,000 question. Is the American Jewish century winding down as we fear the American century has wound down? That is the great problem that remains to be seen. So I'm not going to solve that problem, just leave us with that. Oh, yeah, that branch, it's. High cost of housing, though, is a problem of Los Angeles administrators who created it, more so than the industry that, but the industry pay for these is way above the minimum wage. The problem is Los Angeles, because of Los Angeles bad politics and planning, has no housing. So I know what the union is doing is calling for part of the negotiation to be a housing solution. If it's a good solution, I don't know. The writer's strike is a very interesting problem because they are threatened by computerization. For the first time, computerization destroyed the factory worker. Greatest cause of poverty among Blacks in the United States was the destruction of the factory system, some of it because of overseas manufacturing, some of the computerization. And it was a great sort, the wage gap was not as big in the 80s because of that as it is today. And that's the number one factor. So now the brain workers, intelligent workers, now they're going to be industrialized out. And that's a big fear in this end, right? Use of artificial intelligence for writing scripts and so on, right? Do we get too intelligent for ourselves? Am I going to be replaced? Although I've looked at what AI does, and it's not as good. Okay. So those are big issues that we will have to face in the country. Yes, no question, no question. Right. I've heard it. Right. I don't think it was great. Okay. I've tried some stuff. Yeah, go ahead. Then we'll get to.
I know you can't mention everything, but one of the subjects that we just barely touched on are how these peddlers became ultimately great departments.
Right.
Created.
Right.
Who's disproportionately represented. Even Gary Goldwater's grandfather.
Oh, it was a peddler. Right.
Was.
Yeah, that was originally with the German Jewish wave of a century and a half ago, but the peddlers continue into retail and so on. Yeah. Serious, right. Okay, so we'll call it then for everybody. Call it quits. We need to stop the, somebody control the screen share there. On that end, I need Carmen. I'll say goodbye. Okay, no, it has to actually stop the screen share. So we're Jeff with now. Let me see, or see if you can, Doug. It's not screen share. It's the live stream. It says end meeting for all. Yeah, for all. That's it. Okay, I managed to hold up.